Hello dear chess friends, I would like to share another game which was played in World Blitz Championship by world champion himself, Magnus Carlsen, versus one of the best players in Russia, Grandmaster Jakovenko. So Carlsen opts for c4, we have c5, and we have English, the symmetrical variation, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, all symmetry so far. And here white's one of the most popular plans, I would say, is to go for b4. However, here Magnus plays d3. A little bit more rare, perhaps pawn move, but also playable. And Jakovenko decides just to copy what Magnus is doing. Here, white plays queen d2. So the idea is so that I could play b3, fianchetto with the bishop, and at the same time my knight is always protected from the possible bishop attacks. So queen d7, b3, b6, as you can see, complete symmetry, bishop b2. Now, the difference actually here is that my b2 bishop is guarded by the queen, and his is not. So what Magnus does now is place knight d5. As you can see, black cannot copy him right now due to this e3. And all the complications that will arise after that actually will favor white due to this fact that the queen is always guarding the bishop here, and black's queen is not. Now again, in this position, he is unable to play e6 because the bishop is simply hanging. So if he plays e5, I probably think Magnus would play f4, knight f3, and put pressure here on the e5 pawn, just like in the game. However, Jakovenko decides to exchange the bishops before that. Queen b2, the rook is hanging right now, so he plays e5, f4 by white. So trying to attack what is pinned here, the e5 pawn. Long castles, knight f3, even building more pressure, and Jakovenko doesn't hold it. He tries to defend it with f6. White, of course, castle short. He is the world champion. He has to play for the win. And I believe with a3 and b4 at some point, white should manage to open the opponent's king if he chooses that as his main plan. For example, if we take e takes f4 and knight takes f4, again, white has beautiful game. We have a3, b4, trying to get to the opponent's king. Bishop h3 is in there. White has a nice position. Instead, knight c7 happens. So black man wants to exchange, I would say, the most annoying piece in the camp right now, the knight on d5, which is super strong. And Magnus just supports it with e4. So we have knight takes d5. I believe both captures are possible. Magnus decides to take with the e pawn, creating a square on e4 for the knight later on. Knight e7, developing the piece into the game. Fe5, d5, and we have knight d2. Now what is interesting, this knight is getting here on a very amazing outpost. And if, say, we play f5, here actually I could play knight to f3. While I'm threatening the pawn, I also want to go to e6 outpost. So instead of that, Jakovenko just says, okay, get the knight to e4, but at least not to the square on e6. I have rook h f e8, knight e4, and now knight g8. Again, very passive, and same idea. If f5, then I can get the knight to e6. Knight g8 by Jakovenko, b4, finally trying to get to the opponent's king. C takes b4, queen b4, and again I have ideas like c5, a4, a5, and Jakovenko should be losing here. So f5, last chance for counterplay for Jakovenko, allowing the knight to e6, queen d6, offering exchange of queens. So at least he's thinking I'm not getting checkmated. White accepts that and now completely changes his plans. Rook au1. He no longer wants to attack the king without the queens. I'm just trying to fight for e6, trying to pressure and win the e5 pawn and solidify in the technical endgame. h6, knight e6, rook e8, rook takes e5. Magnus has already pawn up. Knight f6, rook fe1. Simply doubling up, and now once the knight moves, we can exchange the rest of the pieces. So when we're material up, simplifying and exchanging pieces will favor the side who has the advantage. Rook knight f4, simply offering an exchange of rooks, and here the position is just very sad for black. All the pieces are bad and coordinated, pawns are hanging. Rook e8 check, bishop c8, d4 by Magnus, train starts moving, g5, c5 counterplay. When our opponent creates a threat, the first reaction is not to defend, it's actually to create bigger counter threats of our own. That's what c5 does. Rook d7, knight g6. Now I want to establish the knight maybe even on e7 with the help of the pawn to d6. So knight f6 happened, rook f8, knight takes d5, and now we have knight e5, and Black is gonna lose a piece inevitably. Jakovenko resigns. I would say really beautiful game by Magnus. Again, I would say very clean as well. It was from completely symmetrical position, and Jakovenko managed to get outplayed completely by the most talented and perhaps the best player on earth, the world champion himself. I hope you enjoyed this game. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, and see you tomorrow in the next video. Stay healthy, continue loving the game, and play chess.